All right. Okay, we're back with another Talking Palettes. I'm your host, Daniel Crosier. I'm so sorry. And I'm here with the wonderful Heather Dalton. Heather, how the hell
Hi,
are you?
Ed. Hi, so good to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's good to see
Uh,
you. It's long.
yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, Heather and I used to work together on a film project back in the years back. Yeah, yeah, just a few months really. Called Neil Cassidy, The Denver Years, and I wanted to reconnect and bring you on the show and just kind of chat about all the fun creative things that you do. But first off, you know, who are you? Where the hell do you come from? No.
Well,
What? Yeah.
that's a really great question. Born and bred Denver gal, came up in the music scene in the late 80s, early 90s. I have Casa Bonita and Lakeside and all those great things running through my veins. It's not sugar and spice. Those are what makes a Denver girl, totally. So I had mentioned I was involved in the music scene. I had several bands in the 90s, the Shrinking Violets, the Pin Downs, Fox Force 5. I was a cocktail waitress at the Cricket on the Hill, which was kind of a historic thing in and of itself. And then through my music connections, I kind of stumbled into television through Teletoons, and I was a volunteer host with Teletoons, which, for those who don't know, was one of the longest running music video programs in the country that even predated MTV. And it still kind of has a very radical, loyal following, even though the show hasn't been on the air for a long time. And so that was kind of my trajectory into television. And from there, it's just all weirdness, which we'll, I'm sure, expand upon here.
Yeah. Yeah. So early on, with the bands that you were in, those were predominantly like punk bands, right?
Yes.
What was that scene like? Especially because that was like what was it? The '90s? Was that accurate? Um, what was that like? The Denver punk scene during that time. I'd imagine King Rat was around. They seemed.
Oh yeah, we played a lot of shows with King Rad, and we knew Luke when he had first moved here from New Mexico. In the late 80s and early 90s, the Denver music scene was indeed thriving. I mean, we have the Fluid. I mean, there's so many bands to name at that point.
Yeah.
There are some weird takeaways as a woman coming out of that scene. It wasn't as supportive as I feel that the music scene is now. I was talking to a colleague who kind of came up through the music scene, and just looking how infinitely the scene has exploded in many different ways. It's incredibly successful now, and how artists really support and hold each other up. I think back then there were a lot of micro scenes, and it wasn't necessarily a competition, but you wouldn't necessarily raise a hand up to anyone. And there was a handful of female musicians at the time, and it was a great scene, and there were a lot of supportive male musicians. I think sometimes the audience was not as appreciative of females coming up in the scene as our male peers. But it set the footprint for, I think, the success that we have today. If you want to talk about the scene as a whole, we had an amazing foundation to kind of do the stair step so that others could come and really build upon the success that was built even back into the late 60s, early 70s, which I wasn't privy to. But we've had a long legacy of great music, and it's nice to see how everything's kind of come to this apex.
Yeah. Earlier this week, I interviewed Denver painter Vincent Cheap, and he's another musician. Back in the '90s, he was managing bands in Fort Collins, and we were talking about with the music scene as you described now. It's kind of now it feels more cohesive and very supportive. So so that, yeah, that's pretty interesting. I kind of, yeah, the way you describe it back then, these little micro groups or cliques, so to speak, right? Um, you know, you know, I don't know if it's a missed opportunity, but it kind of mirrors how I felt with the art scene starting out here in Denver. Right about the time when I was about to graduate from Rocky Mountain College of Art Design and late 90s, early 2000s, that area seemed very kind of scattered. But now it's, even that scene feels like it, they've incredibly supportive. Everybody knows each other, and it's very engaging. So that's pretty wonderful. Um, but as far as like the audience not willing to be as supportive to female musicians, um, is that like, yeah, if you don't mind me going down this rabbit hole, what was it like the testosterone junkies in the audience, or some of those
Yeah,
jerks?
I think there was an element of that, and I think it was just, those times, and it was back in the day.
Right.
And I think having the benefit of, I was heavily involved with Girls Rock Denver, which is the summer camp
Yeah.
for girls 8 to 18 for a long time, and a lot of my female peers, who we all kind of came up on the scene together. We all had a moment in collective time to sit down and talk about some of the things that had happened, some of the inappropriate behavior, and this was pre Me Too even, and there was a lot of healing that went on and created a really solid community of women in support of each other, where we were kind of working in isolation back in the day, and we didn't know that each other were there to reach out to.
Yeah.
And it became more glaringly apparent because I think when I was coming up, it's not things that you even think are inappropriate or wrong. It's just that's the way things were. And
Right.
so you just kind of rolled with the punches, you laughed it off, and you kind of moved on and pulled your bootstraps up.
Yeah.
So I think that it's nice to look back and realize that we have come a long way. And I think the same could be said, like you were saying about the art scene, definitely in the comedy scene. I think we're all kind of orbiting around each other and having similar experiences, but now you're seeing all of those scenes come together to support each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think like, yeah, as far as like, Denver creative groups, that is most certainly true. I still feel, and you work in film and television way more than I do. I still feel that there's a disconnected sensibility when it comes to film in Denver and in Colorado. That's one area. I wish we could come together a little bit more cohesive and be able to support. Not so much in the sense that we're wanting to bring in outside projects from Hollywood to take advantage of our tax incentives, which we really don't have much. But really to just kind of create our own project and share that with the world, much like we do with our own art and our own music, and our own comedy. So, but
I agree. I think that even though I sometimes even hazard saying I'm a filmmaker, because I think my bread and butter and my background is in television. And I think, we had a wonderful experience collaborating with each other, you and Carl Krumpholtz as well, and a lot of other people came to help. A lot of musicians came in to score the film. And I found it, not that other filmmakers weren't supportive, it's just there was no network to really connect us in ways outside of doing commercial jobs for other people.
Right.
And outside of the Emerging Filmmakers Project at the Bug, which is hugely influential, I really had a hard time just finding and building community that way. And television's the same way, because television's so competitive in a lot of ways that television's almost secondary. People don't really think of it, especially on a local level, as an art form elevated to film in that way. So yeah, I agree with you. It'd be nice to find more conveners to connect us all in ways to where we could collaborate and get things out there. Sorry, that's my computer up there.
Oh, I thought that was mine. I was just like, man, it's making noises. It must be working.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned, you know, the Bug Theater, and I've also found that to be an incredibly, you know, supportive, you know, grouping and network. I think there are, and there's a number of filmmakers that have kind of come out of, I, you know, and I could be wrong in my perception, but have come out of, you know, that collaborations, you know, that have started at the Bug Theater, like Heather Garcia, who's doing some pretty cool horror movies. And then there's a couple of documentary filmmakers that have been able to make you know, an amazing living. And I'm flaking on the name of one of the gentlemen because he's been nominated for an Oscar too. So,
Robert Muratori?
What's that?
Robert Muratori or?
Oh, no. I'm friends with Robert. No, I wasn't.
Daniel, I
but,
know who you're thinking of.
But Robert and his collaborations with Alexander O. Felipe are absolutely remarkable. I don't know if they got, you know, got going within that group. I know they participated, but yeah, I mean, those guys are absolutely amazing, and they're such sweet people.
It really is. And here's a weird factoid is Heather Garcia and I grew up together and went to high school together.
Oh,
and,
that's sweet.
Yeah, we're very good friends and we still remain in contact. And I'm so incredibly proud of the work that he has done. And he's always been a big champion, kind of helping cheer me on. So yeah, it is a weird thing because, I mean, we were literally snot-nosed kids to see how we both have I don't know if we've finally grown up. We're close, but
yeah, I don't consider myself an adult. Though age, you know, the rings, you know, in my trunk, you know, say otherwise. You
yes.
know, if you were to do a cross section of me, it's like, oh, this is the year I was born, and yeah, oh, the mighty redwood.
Yeah, it's same here, and then it's terrifying to even think about it.
Yeah, but that's fun. I like the idea of age. You know, it just is little signifiers of like where you've traveled and, you know, what you've done and what you survived. So I think if you can wear the scars, you know, pretty well, I think they can be something pretty storied.
Absolutely, and I feel incredibly proud, and I feel like a lot of our peers and a lot of our friends, we've all packed several different lifetimes into one lifetime. And I feel definitely with my life, I feel so incredibly grateful that I've had so many incredible experiences. And it all circles around the city of Denver and the connections I've made there. And, you know, especially in these times, not even to get morbid, but if you want to look back, I've even had to think right now, if it were to all end, would I have been happy? And I would have been more than happy with all these crazy things and getting to the age to really appreciate it. Because when I was young, I didn't appreciate what the hell was going on.
No, I would agree. You know, it feels like time, you know, is speeding up. And, you know, it just makes me want to, you know, it's like hang on a little bit more to, you know, to that next cup of coffee or something, or just, you know, try to appreciate the moment as much as I can, because that moment is always going to be fleeting. So, you know, kind of going back, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you had volunteered to be the host of, you know, Teletoons. You know, how did you, and this is for, you know, Channel 12 PBS, right? Yeah, and I remember like growing up, specifically when I was in like junior high, high school, coming home late night on Saturday night and, you know, from my busing at a Mexican food restaurant back where I was growing up, just outside of LaSalle, Colorado. Um, I'm from Crosier, which is another farming community. So I grew up, milking some cows and shoveling a lot of shit. Um, but I would come home and just before I would catch weird scenes from a Fellini movie, there'd be teletunes, like a good 22 minutes block of music videos to bands I hadn't heard of or seen, and then there'd be like the local thing I think going to, and so that was my introduction to teletunes, and this would be like early mid 90s, but you've participated with that for quite some time, and that was your foray to a television career. It's like, can you kind of give us a little bit more of what that's like?
Absolutely. And even before I became involved with Channel 12, I was a huge fan. And, blue collar kid, we couldn't afford cable. We were down to the 4, channels that you could get over the air. And to me, Channel 12 was counterculture. Not only the fact that they had teletoons, but they aired Doctor Who and Outer Limits, and they weren't afraid to take risks at all. And I remember, this is a weird side note about myself, one of my earliest crushes was on Carl Sagan, because I would lock myself in my room and watch Cosmos all the time. So I had a huge affinity for the station. And then teletoons, I mean, just mind-blowing. There were so many people that I looked up to. Sherry Burnson, who's still with the station. Bob Rupp was one of the original VJs. And never in my wildest dreams did I think that would be my future. And they held some auditions, and I think I auditioned with around 40 other people. And at that time, I was just starting out in a band called the Shrinking Violets. And one of the producers said, hey, maybe you should come down and check it out. And so I did an incredibly horrible audition, but they asked me to come back and do it again. And everything kind of kicked into gear at that point. And I was working at that point. My co-host was Roman Brohl, and we were given one of the single best opportunities. Kids in their 20s in the early 90s, when the music was exploding, record labels were throwing out money hand over fist, and artists were coming through and breaking. Some of my notable interviews: Love and Rockets, Luscious Jackson, Gwen Stefani, when they were in touring support of the Dance Hall Crashers. I mean, it goes on. And when we talk about age, I remember being so naive, thinking, this is what life is now, Heather.
Yeah.
This is going to happen for you. You'll always be backstage, and you'll always do these things. And I really wasn't savoring the moments, but it was incredible. And then after that, I think I really started watching the producers and watching how much control and creativity the producers had behind the camera.
Okay.
And I wanted to do that, because being on camera became kind of a grind. And I was a peroxide bleach blonde at the time. And, so people automatically made the assumption that I was an airhead. And it was kind of a little vacuous.
Yeah.
So I went to school at Metro, which had a great broadcast component. I was in speech communications and technical communications, and got my degree, and told them at the station I was really serious, and they hired me on to be a tape librarian. And from there, I'm the director of production now.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Is Dominic still there?
Dominic is indeed still there.
Nice. What is his role? I can't remember. Is he like station, like general manager or something? Or?
He is the station manager at this
Yeah.
point. He was director of production, and then when I assumed the role, he became the station manager. And here's how the 7 degrees of Haler Garcia, Kevin Bacon, and Dominic. I went to junior high with Dominic, and we're
Oh,
actually we found out many years later that we are related by second cousins. So it's
yeah.
just
So don't ever date.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, oh god, no, absolutely not.
I think wasn't that the second to last episode of Community?
You know, I see. This is like I'm trying to take the silver linings of this whole thing, and I never watched Community. And I
Oh,
thought to myself just yesterday, great, now I can actually watch Community. So
definitely do that. That is one of the best, situation comedies. I mean, it really isn't that, but it's, yeah. If I don't know if you're into Rick and Morty or anything like that,
mhm.
but it's the same creator.
Oh, that's
Dan
right.
Harmon. So
Yeah.
it is absolutely it's fantastic. I would say it's Gonzo, but it's like structured chaos. It's very very well mapped out, and oh my god, the talents in there are fantastic. So
See, that makes me feel better because after getting through the Tiger King, I'm just kind of trying to meter myself, and I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands. So I'm glad to
yeah,
have much.
yeah, something big just came into our backyard. That was weird. Now we're finding that we're getting all kinds of animals, venturing into neighborhoods that we're all the way out in near Parker and
Hmm.
Southlands Mall, but yeah, I've just been noticing a lot more bunnies and a lot more squirrels, and I'm hoping for something a little bit more exotic, like a fox or a raccoon, but
They're coming to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. I
as
think.
they should. Yeah, you see the photos being posted online. Oh, here's a cougar and stuff. It's like, aw, why aren't I in the foothills? And then you realize, yeah, they're cute from a distance, but they're also like, they'll eat your baby.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm downtown now on 19th, like around 19th and Uptown, and
Um,
still haven't seen any wildlife. Just the normal weirdness that is Uptown. But
yeah.
I kind of wish I miss wildlife.
What's it? Yeah, that's right. Because for a time you were working remotely in the woods,
Mhm.
someplace. Yeah, and you were still working for Channel 12. I mean, that's got to be quite the experience. I wouldn't have any frame of reference.
It was pretty incredible. It was at a pivotal time, and at that point, I was married, and my family wanted to move up to Carbondale. And I was, as you know, born and bred in Denver, so it was kind of an interesting transition moving from the city
Yeah.
to a remote cabin. It was incredible. It was definitely incredible, and I am so grateful to have had that time. And the station allowed me to set up my edit suite remotely. I would come down for productions, go back and put things together. And needless to say, that did not work out. So I came back to Denver. There are pros and cons. I missed Denver so very much, and it is a part of who I am. So it was almost kind of like the phantom limb syndrome. I
Oh,
kept
okay.
trying to, fit in and be a mountain girl, but I have a great appreciation for the mountains, but I'm not a mountain gal. And so coming back was a great homecoming. I have to say, being on lockdown right now, I would love to have a yard to walk back
Right.
into and just
Right.
kind of roam around. Right now, I'm kind of in like a veal cell of this
Yeah.
apartment building. But it was great, and I was really amazed that the station valued my work with them so much that they allowed me to do that. And that they got to say, ha, you're back.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't take the city out of the city gal.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's that's pretty cool. And just prior to that, I think we were wrapping up, collaborating on the Neil Cassidy, Denver Years project. Can you tell us a little bit about that project? What got you to kind of transition for a little bit, at least, from television into doing a film about Neil Cassidy?
Absolutely. Strangely enough, that's once again, that project was spurred on by my love of this city.
Mm-hmm.
I had read the rite of passage that everybody goes through, like when they think they're deep and they're young. I read On the Road and, patted myself on the back and fell in love with Dean Moriarty, the character, and then kind of did some more investigation into who Neil Cassidy actually was and his deep roots here in Denver. And I thought, well, I'll keep waiting for somebody to tell this story. The story needs to be told. And at that time, gentrification had just started kind of kicking off, and the urban blight and all these historical buildings were being torn down. And I kept waiting, like, who's going to tell this story? Somebody's going to tell this story. And it finally came to me that I needed to. And I reached out to the family, and I had heard Carolyn Cassidy. And I had been told that they had several different documentary producers approach them, and they had all received a cease and desist and were told not to do it. And they allowed me to meet with them. I had very heartfelt, sincere conversations with the family, and they agreed that they wanted me to be the one to tell his story from the Denver perspective. And at that point, I have to say, Dan, you were so instrumental in that project because it was a no budget. You were the wind beneath my wings, literally at the end, because it had been 10 years. It took 10 years. And I was having a hard time crossing the finish line, and having you and Carl Krumpholz kind of come in and breathe new life into it with your contributions to the film really helped elevate things. And so I was really proud that we got it out there. And for those of you that don't know, Carl and Dan had done amazing illustrations. And let's not forget Norman Dillon, who had kind of helped out with some animations.
He was massively instrumental on that end.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many local musicians stepped up to help us out, all kinds of local creatives. And it was an enormous, and, being a single woman who never had children, that is my happy toddler. It's basically grown up and going to middle school at this point. But that was probably the most monumentous experience in my life thus far.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, yeah, for me coming in on that project, I had no idea who Dean Moriarty or Neil Cassidy were. I don't had no frame of reference. So for that, beat poetry and that genre and that lifestyle, really, I was kind of oblivious. So that was new territory for me. And along the project, I learned about that through you. So I got more of your perspective on that and that level of appreciation for that. So it's still for me it's still a process of learning and kind of absorbing because that is a culture that is incredibly rich and an amazing group of free thinkers and people that wanted to live in response to like more of the conservative way that everybody seemed to be going in the late 40s and 50s and even into the 60s. So that was pretty interesting. That was definitely eye-opening for me. And I think bringing like Carl on as an illustrator too, like he had a background and an appreciation for that culture too. So that's why I felt that his style really spoke to that much more than anything I could do.
Well, and I think it's interesting right now that you mentioned the 40s and 50s are almost mirroring kind of in different ways what's happening right now. And the Beat loyalists are a huge group of people. And, you know, we check the metrics on the website, and one of the highest searches is for that documentary through the PBS system, through PBS 12.
Fantastic.
And I think that new generations keep continually finding the Beat literature that speaks to them. And what the good thing is I met with Carl, and we're in development on something surrounding the Joan Anderson letter at the request of the Cassidy estate. So hopefully we'll have some good news on something like that before. But it is such an active community. You know, there's so many events. Mark Bleasner holds the Neil Cassidy birthday bash here in Denver every year. They've started doing them in San Francisco. I have never met, you know, it's kind of like the Simpsons comic book nerd guy. There's definitely the Beat equivalents that like Sue Hitler, you know, like, and I don't have the dates readily available, but it's incredible to see how many different types of people gravitate towards the Beats, and especially Neil Cassidy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, you bring up too the Neil Cassidy birthday party. I remember, you know, some of the people from the documentary that gave testimony, you know, living amongst and interacting with Neil, and you know, it's and I hate to say this, but they're of that generation where they're not long for this earth. So there's that oral history that they have to keep, you know, reconveying and reintroducing in order for it to live on. Because some of it, you know, the only way it gets documented nowadays is on means like this, on film, and the occasional book that gets published. And right now, I mean, I'm switching gears a little bit too. You know, so after that film, I know you wanted to work on another project. And we briefly talked about it. It was the Lakeside project, right? And I don't think at the time you kind of, you know, let me take that ship, which we crashed it. And but you know, do you have aspirations or ever think about like picking up those reins again and running with that?
Actually, that would be something that would be of interest, because at that time I had just moved up to the mountains and couldn't really facilitate and help things out. And, you know, all the players that were involved, it was you and Jim Norris, who I absolutely adore. And I think, and Ryan as well. And I think if we all emerge out of this, we should talk, because that too is living, breathing Denver history in many ways that is so significant. And like you said, with the Beats in that generation, they might not be long for this earth, and Lord only knows with Lakeside what the future holds.
Right. Yeah, we I think the last time I was at Lakeside, probably like, you know, 3-4 years ago or so, and I took Enigma over there. So you know, we had a lot of fun, you know, just riding the rides and, you know, see. But it was interesting to see, you know, being able to participate in you know, the rides in the way we are, and then having components of the park just shut down and not available to the public at large. So it was interesting. There's definitely that disheveled you know, feel to it, and it was almost like a remnant of a bygone era. And so I definitely think it would be worthwhile to document at least.
Oh, absolutely. And as you know, Bree Davies was involved too, who is just, you know, a huge Lakeside historian. And I think It definitely, and like you said, with things being closed, I always felt like every time I went over there, it was like a weird metaphor for a lost childhood too, you know, because you see this and it was, you remember the gleaming gloriousness of Lakeside as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's the broken innocence. And there's so many, you know, the fact that it's incorporated as its own township and people actually live there is just insane to me. Yeah.
Its own
I think
municipality.
so. Hey, funders, if you're out there listening, we will take your money and produce a great documentary.
How can investors get a hold of Heather Dalton?
PBS 12. Just reach out.
All right. You know, back to like, you know, you're working with Bree, and you're also incidentally working with or have worked with my friend Terry Barton Gregg. You know, I'll be interviewing her, I think, next week. I wanted to, you know, start bringing in comedians and stuff, and I think she has a delightful perspective. You know, you're working with them on is it Sounds of 29th Street? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That is.
And can you tell us a little bit more what that is? Because that's kind of that what's taken place, at least now, not directly, I think, of what Teletoons used to be.
And I think that, that's my direct legacy coming out of Teletoons, was to create a music program. And at this day and age, you know, there had been talk about resurrecting Teletoons and trying to do that. However, just to secure the licensing rights to play one video at this point would break us. We couldn't afford that. Yeah. And then we were like, well, wait a minute. We have tens of hundreds of great artists in this town that would be happy to allow us to showcase their talents. And so it kind of came together, and Amy Larson was one of the original founders of the show, as well as some of the guys from Brass Tree Sessions. We came in, and the first two seasons were sheer experimentation, and you can see the show kind of evolve. And then after that, we realized we have a great comedy scene, and let's try to highlight a lot of that. John Baxter from This Ain't No Cowtown came in and helped curate a few things, which I love John. And so now we just finished our 8th season, entering our 9th, and we've had multiple hosts. It's almost like the Spinal Tap, you know. We started out with dear and beloved Sid Pink, and we're sending Jason all of our love and heartfelt hopes for a speedy recovery. Magic Cyclops, I had to jump in a few times, and Bree, with her great connection to the music scene, her advocacy for artists, and just her knowledge of local music and Denver itself seemed to be a great fit. So Bree's been with us for several years and continuing on into the future. I think she's a great ambassador for us. And Terry came in, Aunt Terry, who we all know and love, and she's been just a joy and a thrill to work with for several years as well.
Cool.
So we still have air in the tires and gas in the tank, so we're going to keep on going. Nice. And then you mentioned another collaborator that we just recently brought on because his band Bolognium played, and Richard Taylor.
Love
and
Bolognium.
So Bonnie Finley is coming in to do some audio every now and again.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, we have a really fun crew and a fun staff. But Richard Taylor has taken over as editor and producer because I had to kind of pull back my role, but Richard's doing a great job, and I'm excited to see where next season goes.
Yeah, you can't kill yourself by wearing so many hats.
Yeah. And it was it was a heartbreaking realization to say I have to walk away from my baby for it to survive.
Right.
Because I had other things to do, and I think it's really good, and I can't wait to watch Terry, you and Terry.
Yeah, I think that'll be pretty fun. You know, I'm used to like being out in public with her, and it's like always loud, And so I'm like sitting there focusing on, yeah, unless she's on stage and she's got the mic, but if she's like sitting there talking to me, I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck you're saying. Um,
I can't hear
yeah, I
you.
can't hear you. It's like really loud, and you know, I'm picking up all the side conversations, and you know, she's so that's always fun. It's just like slow down. What are you? It's like, oh well, that thought's fleeting. Um,
It's fun, just it's out of there.
so now I hopefully with this format I'll have her undivided attention, and we can focus.
Oh, most definitely.
But no, that's great. So what, you know, if you don't mind me asking, um, you know, what other shows are you in programming? Are you developing over at, I shouldn't say developing. You know, some of that stuff might be secretive, but you know, do you have going on right now with Channel 12? Because I mean, that's essentially not only the day job, but that's also a big creative outlet.
Absolutely. We and you've been a producer on Street Level before, and we kind
Yeah,
of changed.
that was fun.
Yeah, and we would love to have you back as we go forth in the
Yep.
future.
Jim and Ryan and I are always ready to go.
Those are still some of my favorite segments of all time, like absolutely, bar none.
We had fun, and they were kind of like little shotgun blasts, especially when it came to the editing. It's just like, nope, just wherever the topic went. I don't care if that were. It's like,
We've
yeah,
kind of changed trajectory with that to not necessarily be about a specific street. Instead, we're more focusing on individuals. So this last season, we had Kaylin Heffernan, Melina Speaks, Kate Kavanaugh from Western Daughters Butchers, Reagan Bird, and there's another eluding me right now, which I feel really bad. But it's another snapshot of Denver and a flavor of Denver through the eyes of people who are change agents in town.
cool.
And I'm trying to get off the ground. This could be several years to try to get funding, but I'm trying to develop a 4-part series called Music Belongs to Everyone, about the curative powers and the healing powers of music,
Yeah.
anywhere from the perspective of licensed music therapists who have to go through an ungodly amount of training to self-medicating through music and the pitfalls in between, and how politics and music kind of come together, how we're all connected through that thread.
Yeah.
Which that's exciting, but like you said, funding, and it's we'll see how that develops. But the most exciting thing right now is, especially given the shelter-in-place orders, we were fortunate enough to be approached by the We Are Denver live streaming network,
Oh, cool.
who is doing incredible work right now. We have a great relationship with another one of our shows, Headroom Sessions, that's independently produced by Matthew Shaw and El Neff. And so they brought us into the conversation, and they've started, it's kind of like Denver's own MTV, but more expansive. So they're streaming during the shelter in place. Westward's come on as a partner. Ourselves, Headroom Sessions, the Rise Music Festival. And so they're building a live stream 24/7 of great Denver content.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's been really exciting, and we're humbled and honored to be involved with that. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months and how this is going to change the face of things, but this has been a great way to kind of keep my mind off of things and to contribute to the community in meaningful ways.
Yeah, I think yes, especially right now, any way that you can connect with people is virtuous. It's worthwhile. I think yeah. I mean, clearly we're doing this to keep, you know, those who are most susceptible to this disease, you know, healthy, and yeah, we definitely, like you said, you know, any distraction is welcome, but also that interconnectedness. That way, when we get out of here, when we get out of our self-imposed you know, prisons, you know, house arrest, I won't show you my ankle collar, but you know, then hopefully we can, you know, approach the outside world with fresh eyes, and like take take the opportunity to change what needs changing, and hopefully, maybe for the better. But
Agreed. And I think one of the things that I'm learning, and I think that this is for creatives and people within our sphere here, everyone's always doing and doing great, incredible things. But for me, just having the opportunity to slow down and think and to process what's going on and be really mindful with where my attentions are going rather than just doing things for the sake of being productive has been really incredible and great. And like you said, when we emerge from all of this, it's going to be so wonderful to come to the table with an open heart and open mind with everybody and see what collaborations and what we can come up with.
Yeah, hopefully this kind of also, teaches us, and I don't know if it's true for me yet. I don't think I've had that inner dialogue, but, a sense of patience, not only for others, but, but for myself too. And I think you were talking about, you mentioned that just briefly, that you don't have to occupy yourself just for the sake of being busy.
Yeah, there's the cold being busy, right?
Yeah. I guess it is better than the cult of personality.
I did love that song though.
The song's great. Yeah.
It was really good. Thank you, Living Color.
Yeah, true. I'm not denouncing the song. Song's great. It's the other thing, that that the song is about. But yeah, it's there's a lot of things to kind of contemplate and take in focus, take in stride, or maybe not at all. Just kind of learn to live in the moment, so to speak. But yeah, I'm always excited to see what new stuff Heather Dalton is producing. What the new show is, what the new project. But right now, the thing that comes to mind is, where can I go find your music, the bands that you used to perform with?
Oh wow.
Where would be a great location to find that? Or is it
MySpace?
I remember MySpace, my old band. That's where it's been kind of held captive.
They're kind of buried. But the good news with this is also too, I kept seeing the articles of, the latchkey kids are going to be okay with this, the latchkey generation, which that was our generation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. I feel like sometimes I'm waiting in that time between getting off of school and waiting for my parents to come home and started writing songs and stuff again. It's been wonderful. So who knows? Hopefully, I would like to dabble into a new music project, and there's some things swirling around. The archive is maybe better left to history. I don't know. You might be able to find some obscure Pin Downs or Shrinking Violets or Fox Force 5 recordings out there. But yeah, you're going to have to work to find them.
But that's not a bad thing, because I think, we still come from that generation that's pre-internet, where everything's like at the at your fingertips. So I think kids, and this is just my perception, but I think kids today, they're used to getting anything they want at the touch of a button. You and I, we would go into a record store, we'd have to go dig, and a lot of times we're buying albums based on the quality of the artwork on the album.
100%.
So, now when I'm online, I'm going digging for something. It's like, okay, I'm in the mood for something new, and I'm digging for new music and stuff like that. So, online you can hear that thing. So like today, I was told about Ian MacKay's new band with his wife and one of the members of Fugazi, and it's called Koriki. And you can find it on Bandcamp. the album was supposed to come out earlier in March, but for obvious reasons, that got delayed. So I was like, it's always, I think the act of hunting for it makes you appreciate it. Hopefully you appreciate, the music that you find, but I also kind of like the hunt.
Oh, absolutely. And I was so incredibly overjoyed. My stepdaughter is 16, almost 17 now, and she doesn't like anything as far as MP3s. She will only buy vinyl.
Wow.
Yeah, and so when she comes up here, it's a huge thing to go to Twist and Shout and go through the vinyl section, and and of course she speaks to all my love. She was like, "I'm really looking for Siamese Dream on vinyl," and
Wow.
that made me so happy. And I think hopefully future generations will, because yeah, you're right. I remember poring over the liner notes and almost memorizing everything, be it
Yeah.
an album or a CD. And it is part of the intimate experience you have with music. Now, when I go look online, I almost become, I feel like I have a certain amount of ADD when it's devoid of
Right.
any kind of intimate. And so I become overwhelmed and I can't hear anything that sounds different. If that makes sense. It's almost
No.
like this wall of like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this.
Oh yeah. No, I think and I think that is a big part of my experience is like there's so many other distractions. But I think I think that's part of the fun too. It's just like, where's that one diamond in the rough that's going to make me hyper focus? So I'll sit there and kind of come over a few things. Like obviously, I'll start with my iTunes account and start there, and it's just like, oh, this is such garbage, but you keep funneling down. It's just like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this band. They're circa 1976. They're a punk band. Never heard of them. It's like, wait, what is this? Or like early 80s, Flipper. And and you sit there and you listen to it. It's like, oh, there's like nothing polished here. I love it. It just sounds like the clamor of a trash can being knocked over by a raccoon. So there's that kind of lends itself. It's like, okay, this is transportive. I think that's
Authentic.
yeah. There's an authenticity to it, and maybe in the moment it evokes some kind of emotion.
And two, there's nothing like, for me, just getting lost in a record store and losing track of time, like
Oh.
it could be for hours.
Yeah, I miss experiences like that. Obviously now I miss it more because
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can't have it. If you want that experience, you have to go virtual. That's it. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go be the lawnmower man.
I know. I was even thinking today of what I wouldn't give to go to Wax Trax or Tristan Shout and just spend a couple of hours. But
Yeah.
when we get done with this.
Yeah, most definitely. And as far as like sacrifices go, like remember like our grandparents' generation, having to deal with World War II and the massive, the whole country had to, come together in some capacity, even the racist factions, and really delve into manufacturing, donating metals, donating stuff, buying bearer bonds and stuff, and investing into that effort. And people, went over and died bloody deaths, and we, and then, you got the Vietnam War too. I mean, that whole generation had to give up so much, for that stupid ordeal. And now it's, you get to stay at home and play PlayStation.
Yeah.
And you're helping people by doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it is so surreal how comfortable we are in this time. And yeah, I think the isolation, especially given modern day pressures and the mental health of our society as a whole,
Right.
that this is kind of trying for a lot of people in different ways. But yeah, by no means is it being on the front lines of it's just so weird. And I know that there's also a lot of guilt that's surrounding this,
Yeah.
that we're not doing enough. We're
Right.
lazy Americans who are sitting and playing PlayStation and eating Cheetos while this pandemic is going on. And how dare I feel depressed or sad, or, it's a weird dichotomy of everything being thrown at us at once.
Right. I think we need to allow ourselves that room to say, hey, it's okay to actually feel depressed. It's okay to feel sad. It's just as long as you understand it's for the betterment of everybody, right now. So, we'll come out of this however which way, we do. And hopefully when we do, I'll have found your Fox Force 5 music. And
That's a challenge, sir. That is a challenge.
I shall take that challenge.
All right.
I have my sword and my shield, which comes in the form of this little clippy thing. Whatever's within reach. My coffee mug, my shield.
Got it all. We've got it all.
Got it all. So, hey, Heather, we're just about ready to wrap up. Where can people go and find your shows?
Absolutely. If you go to pbs12.org, we have a wealth of shows in our archive. We have over, I think, 130 different acts that have been on Sounds on 29th now. And there is a member benefit called Passport that's just $5 a month that you can get all PBS programming, even from their archive. So that's kind of a neat thing. And my bosses will be happy that I mentioned that. But yeah, just check us out online. We're on YouTube, but mainly pbs12.org.
Oh, fantastic. One thing we didn't really talk about too much before we wrap up, one more little topic. The Girls School of Rock. What is that again?
Girls Rock is a summer camp. It's an organization that's probably one of the best organizations I've ever worked with in my entire life. It's volunteer run, and female musicians mentor young female musicians, the ages 8 to 18. They have these girls create their own band and write an original song with a span of a week. And then at the end of the week, they play a showcase. But it's not just about the music. It's also about healthy sense of self, empowering people and young women. And let me also say people on the gender binary and people who are very fluid in different ways, to really find their voice and have confidence in finding their voice. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. So I think with that, we'll probably close. Is there a website for that? I'm sorry.
I believe that's girlsrock.org, I believe.
Girlsrock.org.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, I think with that, we're probably going to close out. After I'm done hitting stop on the record, stay on for a second.
Okay, you got it.
And thanks again, Heather, for coming on. And this has been Talking Palettes, a lovely Wednesday, early evening. Well, I'm Dan Crosier. We're going to sign out. Have a good one.
See ya.